Good morning, everyone. I'm Brett Algren. I'm here to talk about self-ownership. Self-ownership and why did I pick this topic? Self-ownership has been something that I've really tried to work on as a coach, especially the last couple of years as I've started to read and learn more about the situation. And I've learned through all this reading that the greatest leaders, greatest athletes of all time in every sport and even business and life situations, they own their situations. They own the good and the bad and the ugly and everything in between. And in order to be a great leader, you have to be a self-owner. Introduction to self-ownership. There are no bad units, only bad officers. This captures the essence of extreme ownership and what it's all about. I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but I think this is a great quote to open up my topic. This is the start of understanding that bad units, bad teams, those are a direct reflection of the coaches and the leaders of those teams. My definition of self-ownership is the idea of results come from the work that is put into something, not a matter of luck and chance. So as a leader, I understand that you can catch unlucky breaks, and in sports especially, there are things that go against you, but understanding the things that are in your control and owning those things, that's how you make the difference, and that's how you become a self-owner. Owning the W's and more importantly, owning the L's. As a leader, it is great. You do get to take credit when things go right. And knowing, going back and learning from your preparation going into that win and learning from it. Things that you did to prep for the big game or to prep for the business meeting. What did you do and how did you create that W? But more importantly, the same thing on the flip side. When you lose, when you have a bad beat, learning from that loss. Not just letting it happen and moving forward with it. Actually going back and reflecting and going, okay, we lost. What preparation did I put into that loss? And I think that one of the most important things about self-ownership is teaching it too. Oftentimes we think as coaches of owning the situation and we can understand that concept, but now teaching it to our athletes and creating that mindset. As a basketball coach, I always go to basketball when I first think about this, but if I have an athlete that comes to me and they say they want to be an all-conference player next year, I have a real meeting with them and talk about the things that they personally need to do. In the off season, working on their game, improvements that they make. And it's not just me as a coach putting them in the situation to be successful. What things are they going to do to make it work? What are they going to change in their shot? What are they going to do on their own? And understanding that they're the ones in charge of reaching that goal or helping their team. It's not just me as a coach. They have to also own their success and own their failures. Examples of self-ownership. Once again, I'm a basketball guy, so one of the very first things I go to is Michael Jordan, one of the greatest players of all time, and how did he get to that point? A quote from him is, some people want it to happen, some wish it would happen, and others make it happen. And Michael Jordan obviously is one of the greatest examples of someone who's made it happen. He went through highs and lows throughout his career early on as a kid, and he just worked and changed everything about his game to get to the point he wanted to. A lot of people know Michael Jordan as the greatest player of all time, which is true or not true. But what I've learned about him is he's actually one of the greatest workers of all time. And it's because he learns from his mistakes. He embraces this concept of self-ownership. And when things go against him, when he loses, he goes out and changes something about it. Tim Grover, who was his personal trainer, has wrote multiple books, Winning and Relentless. I would highly recommend reading them. And in those books, he talks about what changed Michael Jordan, what makes Michael Jordan different. And for example, Michael Jordan early on in his career couldn't get over the hump of beating the Detroit Pistons. They were physically stronger than him. They beat him up, and he couldn't go through a 7-game series versus the Pistons. Michael Jordan knew that, and he changed something about it. He went to Tim Grover, who was his personal trainer, and he hired him, and he needed to get bigger and stronger. And he completely changed his training. He changed his training. He changed his diet. He fixed his body and turned it so he was not only the best player on the court, but also the most physically dominant player on the court. And that got him over the hump to beat the Pistons. It was the same thing that happened when he played baseball, retired from baseball, came back to basketball. He wasn't in basketball shape. He was a baseball player 3-4 months ago, and now he's on the basketball court trying to produce what he used to. he's not in the same caliber of shape. The media critics all said that he lost a step, which was true. But instead of him just going, I've lost a step, we'll see if I can make this work. That very night that he lost to the Orlando Magic in the Eastern Conference Finals, he went to Tim Grover and said, we need to get to work right now. And he owned it. He knew that those are the things that were going against him. And instead of just blowing it off or thinking that that's what it's going to be, he changed it. He went to work right away. And I just think that's a prime example of being a self-owner. Tim Grover talks about it in The Last Dance. It's a 50-second clip. It's really good. Just how Michael Jordan owed it to his teammates, his coaches, his fans to change himself, and how he went back to work that very next day after the Orlando Magic thing, after the Orlando Magic lost, because he owed it to all these people, and he was going to go put in the work. And it's a really good clip from a really good movie. Jocko's extreme ownership. Extreme ownership and self-ownership aren't the same things, but they have a lot of the same ideas. And I talked about this quote already, but this is the direct quote from the book. Whether you're in SEAL training, in combat, on distant battlefield, or in business or in life, there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. And I love how he talks about or in life too, because as an owner, yeah, we got to take it in our business job, our sports job, our coaching job, whatever it is, but also in life. As a person, part of a family, high character people in the community, you have to own your situations at all times. And I think Jocko's extreme ownership is self-ownership, just to another level. It is understanding that you have to have self-ownership all the time and everything that you do, and all the time when you're leading. As a great leader and coach, I need to take ownership in everything, how my players are playing on the court, but also how my players and athletes are acting outside the court, and owning those situations and trying to instill those high character qualities in them, and understanding that that's who we are. That's a self-ownership that's taken to the next level even. And I think Jocko does a great job of talking about that in his book, Extreme Ownership. Self-ownership in the Bible, I found lots of different verses that talk about this self-reflection and self-ownership. And really, I'm learning that there's key lessons throughout the entire Bible. And it's really a critical point. Jesus and God are teaching us throughout that each man, each person is in charge of what they do in life, and that's how they will be evaluated and judged. Nowhere in there does it talk about how that person was unlucky or they didn't have a chance. It talks about the choices that were made and how that will affect them throughout. And I think the Bible does a great job of telling a lot of stories on this lesson of self-ownership and how a person makes their decision and they have to live with that decision. Self-ownership and coaching. I think athletics exposes self-ownership to the biggest degree, because there's so many excuses that can happen in sports: bad breaks, bad calls, bad teams, bad play, whatever it is. Understanding that as a coach, those excuses have to go. If you are practicing self-ownership, you are understanding that all of that is a reflection on you as a coach. So constantly working and learning to get your team better and working towards becoming a better team. Losing as the best teacher is something that is always stated. And that's not a true statement unless it truly is. As a coach, when I lose, do I go back to the drawing board and look at what we're doing wrong and what we need to fix? Or do I just count that loss towards a bad break? Losing can be the best teacher if you're losing, once again, a basketball example, because you have 100 TOs and then you go back and look and you haven't worked on anything to take care of the basketball the last 3 or 4 weeks. Then you can go and fix your problem. And that's the ownership part of it. Instead of you have 100 turnovers, it's because the other team's better than you, more athletic than you. They took the ball. Just understanding that same idea, and as a coach, owning the situation can help your team get better and not owning the situation will just continue to keep you in the same spot that you're in. And then I talked about it earlier, teaching self-ownership to athletes. It's critical that everyone on the team understands that they own the team. They are part of this team, and they have to put some ownership into it. Yes, as a coach, you own everything and you have that mindset, but players also need to have the exact same mindset. And everyone who's on board, that helps create a better culture, that helps create better players, that helps create a better team. And so being able to teach ownership to the athletes, that so they understand, hey, you're not shooting the ball very well. Well, what are you doing to change that? Are you staying after practice to get shots up? Are you asking for additional help? Are you changing the things that you're being coached on? If the answers are no to those things, then you are not owning that as an athlete, and things aren't going to change for you. Instead of, on the flip side, my coach isn't putting me in the right situation, my coach isn't doing enough for me. Athletes also need to have that self-ownership, and coaches need to coach them on how to be self-owners. Self-ownership and coaching ethics. I think since this is a class, it's kind of important to talk about this. And as coaches, we're all the time put in situations of what's right and wrong. How we're spending our money, how we're talking to kids, how we're recruiting, how we react to certain situations. We are constantly be putting in situations of ethical dilemmas, and we have to own our mistakes, and we also have to learn from them. When we overreact to a situation, when we talk to a kid maybe a way that we shouldn't have, apologizing, owning the situation, clearing up the mistake is the right way to go at it instead of making an excuse or ignoring the situation. We have to own our mistakes so the next time we're put in that same ethical dilemma, we can make the right decision. And a coach who practices self-ownership will understand that mistakes will happen and you'll be put in that situation again. And knowing from that mistake what you did last time and changing it is really what can make the difference between a good and a bad coach. Where can self-ownership be found in our class readings? You can find it a lot of different places. The best one I've found, because I think it's so important in self-ownership, is a quote from Self-Reflecting and Reflection that can really go into a moral and a non-moral value. So from Practical Ethics in Sports and Management, you must resolve your moral and ethical dilemmas through reflection judgment based on clear moral and non-moral values. Reflective thinking is exercising careful judgment in all moral issues based on your moral and non-moral values. Unfortunately, few of us exercise reflective thinking. I talked about early how I really wanted to start working on my reflective thinking with my self-ownership, and I think the two really go hand in hand. If you are going to own situations, you have to constantly be thinking back on, what did I do differently? What did I need to change? What could I have done to help make the situation better? So I think self-reflecting and self-ownership really go hand in hand. In conclusion, self-ownership has to happen all the time. It's not just when it's easy. It's not just the high points when you're winning and you can take credit for the things you're doing right, but also on the low moments. So when you lose, when a kid makes a bad character choice in the classroom, owning those situations too and things that you can do differently as a coach and leader to help them is just as critical as in those high moments. Coaches need to practice self-ownership and they need to teach it. I think as coaches, it's easy for us to start to practice self-ownership and realize what we're doing right or wrong. But now being able to teach it to athletes so they can practice it also, that's just as important. And reflection is critical to be able to own situations. If you truly want to own a situation and you want to have self-ownership, you have to be able to reflect all the time on what went right, what went wrong, and be able to own that situation. So practicing good self-reflection is going to only help with that self-ownership. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you got some good stuff out of it.